I found myself seated next to the catering station. That's where I witnessed my son's wedding through narrow gaps in a pair of swinging doors, positioned behind trays of cold hors d'oeuvres. I had financed the entire celebration, every centerpiece, every place setting, yet when the music played and speeches began, I might as well have been invisible. I maintained my composure, kept silent, and after the final piece of cake was served, I dismantled everything with a few brief phone calls. There was no table assignment, no place card, no warm welcome, just a metal folding chair with a disposable napkin tossed across it. That was my designated spot, wedged between stacked serving trays and a wobbly service cart that creaked with each rotation of its wheels. I stood motionless for several moments, trying to process the scene. The pungent aroma of tomato sauce hung in the air, clinging to steam billowing from the kitchen. I could feel heat radiating from the ovens against my back, and something inside me twisted painfully. I glanced down at my outfit, a soft lavender chiffon dress, hand-detailed with tiny pearls. I'd spent 3 hours at the salon that morning, pretending this day would hold special meaning for me as it did for them. But no one had warned me. No one bothered to say, "We've made alternative seating arrangements." Nobody acknowledged me when I arrived, not even Thomas. He was too preoccupied, smiling broadly, adjusting his cufflinks, accepting kisses from her mother as though she'd been the one who raised him, as though she was the one who stayed awake through his childhood night terrors, as though she was the one who worked double shifts when he needed dental work, because I couldn't afford both rent and his smile. I clutched my small handbag, beige leather, the one he'd given me years ago for Mother's Day when he still called me Mum, with affection. My hands trembled visibly, vibrating like something electrical was trying to escape through my fingertips. The catering supervisor, barely out of his teens, smiled awkwardly at me. They mentioned you should wait back here, ma'am." The bride was concerned about, visual consistency with the theme. I stared at him. "Theme?" He winced, glancing toward the swinging doors. The metal edge struck the wall with a sharp clang. Laughter drifted in from the reception hall, followed by a burst of music. You know, aesthetic coherence for the photographs and everything. I lowered myself slowly onto the chair. It creaked beneath my weight. There was a dark stain on the floor under my feet, gravy, perhaps. My shoes adhered slightly when I shifted my weight. I examined my freshly manicured nails in a soft pink shade, then looked at the cold chicken breast someone had unceremoniously placed before me on a chipped white plate. The most difficult part? I remained silent, not one word of protest, because it was his special day, because I told myself, don't spoil this for him, don't be that kind of mother, because I had funded everything and still believed that meant something. Pulled out the program I'd been handed at the church. Elegant script on cream cardstock. My name appeared nowhere. Her father escorted her down the aisle. Her mother delivered the first toast. I was merely the financial resource, the phantom in the kitchen, the woman no one wanted captured in photographs. The door swung open again. I caught glimpses of the crystal chandelier, the band beginning to play, the first dance between Thomas and Rebecca twirling beneath amber lighting. He never once looked in my direction. I pressed my napkin against my lips, pretending to dab at a non-existent stain. My eyes burned. I told myself it was from kitchen onions being chopped. The steam, the heat, not the betrayal. But it was. God, it was. Something deep inside me fractured quietly, like a hairline crack spreading across glass. You don't notice until the entire pane shatters. I fixed my gaze on the wall before me. There was a section of peeling paint behind a fire extinguisher. I stared at it so intently I thought I might burn a hole through it. That spot became my anchor, my focal point, the only thing preventing me from collapsing in front of a server, carrying trays of appetizers. Because if I released my emotions, If I began to cry, I wasn't certain I could stop. I inhaled deeply then again. The chicken on my plate had grown cold. I didn't touch it. Eventually, someone brought dessert. I didn't taste it, just observed the layers of white and gold, her colors, her perfect vision. And then I made the calls. They were brief, direct, no explanations needed. Just 3 simple cancellations. The flowers for tomorrow's brunch, the second half of the band's payment, and the open bar scheduled until midnight. My voice remained steady, controlled, and when I hung up, I felt no guilt, no regret. I felt the first stirring of something I hadn't experienced in years. Power. I looked down at my hands again. No longer shaking, my heart no longer racing. Just a quiet hum like an engine returning to life. The door swung open again. Another flash of light, of laughter, of the celebration I was excluded from. Let them toast without me. I had different plans now. The silent revolution. I didn't sleep that night. Not for a minute. I lay in the stiff hotel bed, still wearing my dress, watching the ceiling fan rotate above me, as though it might suddenly detach and crash onto my chest. I almost wished it would. I could still smell kitchen grease in my hair. The scent of expensive roses mingled with my own perspiration. Humiliation clung to me like a second skin. At some point, I removed my shoes. My feet were swollen and painful throughout the reception, but I hadn't dared take them off. I needed to appear presentable, even in the kitchen. Around 3 a.m., I sat upright. The digital clock glowed crimson. My phone vibrated repeatedly on the nightstand. I didn't check it. I already knew what awaited me: missed calls from Thomas and Rebecca. A message from my niece simply saying, "What's happening?" Everyone's panicking. I opened the wedding budget spreadsheet on my tablet. I'd maintained it meticulously for over a year. I knew every expense, every adjustment, every upgrade, every indulgence Rebecca had requested, always with that tight smile. And that word she wielded like a velvet-covered dagger. Elevated. Double quotes Patricia. We just want something a bit more elevated. That's how I agreed to hand-calligraphed invitations from a boutique vendor in Vermont. That's how the venue changed from the community center to a renovated historic barn with crystal chandeliers and vintage barrels. That's how the open bar expanded to include custom cocktails, and the cake grew from 2 tiers to 5. I paid for everything. No one offered to share costs. Not Thomas, not her parents. And I never asked because I wanted him to have everything I couldn't provide when raising him alone. I scrolled through the transactions. My breath caught when I discovered them. 2 unauthorized charges made days before the wedding. Bar tab from a tasting event. Reception dinner upgrade. The same restaurant where they seated me near the kitchen again. My stomach tightened. I double-checked the card information. My card used without permission. Then I saw her note on Venmo to one of her bridesmaids. His mom is covering everything. Might as well go big. #wedding vibes. I didn't cry. Not this time. I felt nothing. That strange, heavy emptiness that follows excessive pain. As though my insides had gone numb. Like my nerve endings had curled inward for protection. I reached over and switched on the lamp. The light stung my eyes. I approached the mirror above the dresser. My reflection startled me. Mascara smudged beneath my eyes. The soft lines around my mouth had hardened into something unfamiliar. My hair was flattened, one side crushed from the pillow. I looked like someone who had aged a decade overnight. But then something shifted. I smoothed my hair back, washed my face, sat at the desk, and opened my email. I drafted 3 messages. To the florist. Please cancel Sunday delivery. The payment balance is being withheld. Thank you. To the band. Due to changes in event scheduling, we will not require the second performance. Please consider the matter closed. To the bar service. We're scaling back post-reception services. Please cancel the second shift. Do not process the remaining balance. All were polite, professional, but final. It was nearly dawn when I hit send. And as the sky outside transformed from black to bruised indigo, I closed my tablet, sat on the bed, listened to the quiet hum of the air conditioning, and for the first time in months, I recognized myself again. I wasn't angry, not yet, but I was finished. Done being convenient. Done being the wallet. Done being the afterthought. Let them figure it out. Let them scramble. Let them remember the moment the music stopped, the bar ceased serving, the flowers never arrived, and wonder why. And perhaps they would recall who made that wedding possible in the first place. The woman in the kitchen, the one they didn't want in the photographs. The hotel room smelled of rose lotion and something faintly metallic. Maybe stress, maybe my skin. I sat cross-legged on the bed. The comforter remained perfectly made beneath me, untouched since I checked in 2 nights earlier. I hadn't cried, not once. But something inside me had gone cold. Not frozen things are brittle. They shatter. I was hardening, becoming tempered. The sun hadn't yet risen. I reached for my purse and removed my phone. 6 missed calls, 2 voicemails, a dozen messages. Thomas, where are you? Why is the brunch cancelled? Mum, seriously, this isn't funny. Rebecca, I don't understand what's happening. Are you okay? Please respond. This is so childish. I laughed quietly, just a soft exhale through my nose. Childish. I opened my banking app again. My fingers moved with the muscle memory of someone who had balanced a checkbook every Sunday for 30 years. The charges remained there, unauthorized, arrogant. The bride, my new daughter-in-law, had helped herself to my card for a pre-wedding celebration and a spa day with her. Bridesmaids. I could see it all in the itemized receipts. Bottles of champagne, manicures, facial treatments, brunch for 8. No one asked permission. No one even informed me. The trust I'd carried in my heart, like an old quilt, warm and familiar, felt shredded, as though someone had taken scissors to it while I slept. I checked my emails. There were 2 new ones. One from the florist. We're disappointed by the sudden cancellation, but we understand. Per our agreement, no refunds for less than 48-hour notice. Fine. The second from the band manager. We were halfway through setting up when your cancellation arrived. It's extremely unusual, but your message was clear. We'll retain the deposit as agreed. Also fine. I wasn't doing this for a refund. This was for me. For the invisible woman on the kitchen chair. For the mother erased from her own son's milestone. My stomach growled. I hadn't eaten since the previous day. The thought of food made me nauseous. Instead, I stood up, pulled back the heavy curtains, and watched the sun bleed into the sky orange, then pink, then a pale gold that made everything appear surreal. Then I remembered something. A small blue file folder tucked away in my desk drawer at home. Old paperwork, legal documents, letters I never discarded. I felt drawn to it, as though it had been whispering to me all along. I packed methodically, showered, washed away the perfume and resentment, dried my hair, dressed in jeans and a button-down shirt that still carried a faint scent of lavender detergent. I checked out of the hotel without speaking. The drive home was silent, just the sound of tires on asphalt, and the soft static of the radio playing songs I didn't recognize. The kind of journey where your thoughts become loud and unfiltered. He didn't mention you. They all saw where you were seated. No one intervened. When I pulled into my driveway, the daisies I had planted 2 summers ago were in full bloom. I didn't pause to admire them. I went directly to my bedroom, opened the desk drawer, pulled out the blue folder, sat on the edge of the bed at the bottom of the stack, Beneath old insurance documents and a few photographs I hadn't examined in years was a letter. The envelope was yellowed at the corners, postmarked from Arizona, dated in my late husband's handwriting. The year he abandoned us. I remembered finding it weeks after he died. I hadn't opened it then. I couldn't. It had felt like salt in an open wound, like letting him speak from beyond when I wasn't prepared to listen. But now, I slid my finger under the flap. The paper was thin, his handwriting slanted and familiar. It began simply. Patricia, I know you never wanted to hear from me again, but I need to tell you something. I felt my pulse quicken. My hands trembled slightly. I've been carrying a secret that I can't take to the grave. You deserve the truth. Thomas, he isn't biologically yours. Rebecca was pregnant when we got together. I thought I could pretend he was mine, but he isn't. And neither of us ever told you. I stopped reading. The room spun momentarily, then steadied. I finished the letter. Apologies, excuses, regrets, words that meant nothing now. Thomas, my Thomas, was the product of someone else's affair. Another woman's child placed on my doorstep like an exam I didn't know I was taking. And I passed. God help me, I passed. Every scraped knee, every bedtime story, every night shift I accepted to buy him sneakers and yearbook photos. I passed with distinction. And yet here I was discarded, replaced, erased. But now I possessed a new clarity, a truth sharp enough to cut through years of silence, and I was finished bleeding. I didn't cry. Even as I sat there with that letter trembling in my lap, its weight heavier than anything I'd ever held, I shed no tears. What would be the point? Tears had constructed Thomas's childhood. Tears paid for his shoes, his asthma medication, his first car. They soaked my pillow after his father left, and again when he walked across the high school stage, not once turning to acknowledge me in the audience. I had exhausted my tears years ago. What I possessed now was something different. Not grief, not heartbreak, clarity. I walked to the kitchen and poured myself coffee. Black, strong. I sat by the window and watched the neighbor's sprinkler tick-tick across the lawn. It was an ordinary Sunday morning, but I was no longer the woman who financed someone else's fairy tale only to receive a folding chair behind the refreshment table. I was no longer the woman who would tolerate this. Not this. I opened my phone and began with the florist. My voice was calm, courteous. I thanked them for their understanding. Confirmed again that Sunday's arrangements wouldn't be needed. I offered no explanation. I owed them none. The band was next. Same tone, same silence regarding the reason. Then the bar service. Hello, this is Patricia Wilson. Yes, that's correct. I'm calling to cancel the cocktail reception for the post-wedding brunch. Yes. No issues. Just a change of heart. Thank you. 3 calls, 3 severances. I could have stopped there. But I didn't, because I knew what was coming. I turned off my phone, waited 5 minutes, turned it back on. 38 unread messages, 3 voicemails. Thomas again. Mom, where are you? The band didn't show up. What's going on? Rebecca's mother. I don't know what's happening, but this is incredibly unprofessional. People are asking questions. Then Rebecca herself. Patricia, honestly. Is this because you were upset about the seating? That's just petty. We had a vision. Don't ruin this. Petty? The word echoed like an insult, like a branding iron. And yet, when I closed my eyes, all I could see was her smirking across the reception hall, knowing where I was, knowing what she'd done, knowing I wouldn't protest until now. I turned off the phone again. Let them spiral. Let the questions accumulate. Let them realize the bar ran dry because I was the source. That the music stopped because I controlled the final note. That the flowers never arrived because the roots were poisoned. I cleaned the kitchen, wiped the counters, fed the cat. It was the most peace I'd experienced in months. Around noon, the doorbell rang. I didn't answer. Let them knock. Let them sit in the discomfort of their own making. Later that evening, I posted a single image on social media. Not of the wedding, not of myself. Just a picture of the check I wrote. Account number blurred. Signature visible. No caption. No explanation. Just that a record of sacrifice. Then I logged off. Not just from the platform. From the guilt. From the silence. From pretending this wasn't betrayal. I didn't need their explanations, their spin, their justifications. Let them confront the wreckage. I wasn't going to rescue them from it. The silence was the first indication they were scrambling. No more messages, no more calls, just a strange stretching quiet, like the eye of a storm passing directly over my house. I could sense it. The tension, the waiting. They didn't know what I would do next. Neither did I. But whatever it was, it would be mine. Monday morning, I brewed coffee and sat by the window again. No makeup, no earrings, just myself and the day and the hum of the refrigerator in the background. Thomas hadn't called since yesterday. The last voicemail had been brief, defensive. You really created a scene, Mum. Everyone's talking. You embarrassed us. I don't know what you were trying to prove, but you crossed a line. I didn't even flinch when I heard it. Because here's the truth no one likes to voice aloud. You can give everything to someone, your time, your money, your love, and still be disposable. You can build their entire world and still be told you don't match the aesthetic. The betrayal no longer surprised me. What surprised me was how little I cared now that I'd stopped seeking their approval. That morning, I deleted his contact from my phone. Not the number, the name. I didn't need to forget him. I just didn't want his name illuminating my screen, as though it still belonged there. Around noon, I ventured out grocery store, post office, small errands. Life continued. And in the bakery aisle of all places, I encountered Diane, my cousin, who'd traveled for the wedding. She smiled when she noticed me, but there was hesitation behind it. Patricia, hey. I nodded. She stepped closer, lowered her voice. Are you all right? I met her gaze. Were you all right? Watching me sit back there? She flushed. I didn't realize that was intentional. I thought maybe you... No, I interrupted gently. You didn't think. That's all. There was an extended silence. I'm sorry, she said finally. It was wrong. I should have said something. I nodded once. Thank you. She appeared relieved, as though that small acknowledgement had freed her. It hadn't liberated me, but it was a beginning. When I arrived home, I discovered a bouquet on my porch. Carnations, the inexpensive variety. Already wilting, no card. I didn't bring them inside. Instead, I carried them directly to the trash bin. Later that evening, I checked social media. The photo of the check had nearly 100 comments. Old friends, colleagues, neighbors, people I hadn't heard from in years. Some were confused, some outraged, but most understood. One comment stood out. This broke my heart, Patricia, and I've never related to something so deeply. Thank you for showing us we don't have to remain silent. That was it, the beginning of something new. Not revenge, not spite, but reclaimed power. Let them rage in group messages. Let them construct their own narrative. I wasn't responding. I wasn't explaining. I was finally choosing silence, not as submission, but as control. And this silence belonged to me. It began with the drawer. A creaky old thing in the guest room dresser, partially stuck, always requiring a gentle bump to open properly. I wasn't searching for anything specific, just clearing out remnants of a life I'd been too exhausted to organize. that somewhere between the yellowing tax forms and expired coupons, I found it. That blue folder again, the same one I thought I'd emptied. That tucked into the pocket, so thin it might have been part of the lining, was a second letter. No envelope this time, just folded once, then again. Handwritten. Same slanted script. Same name. My ex-husband's signature. Stared up at me like an apparition. Michael. It was dated 3 days before his death. Patricia. If you're reading this, I assume the first letter reached you. I don't know if you opened it. I hope you did. I won't waste time apologizing again. I need to tell you something more. Something I couldn't carry with me. Something I should have revealed long ago. Thomas wasn't just someone else's son. He was never supposed to be yours at all. When Rebecca left him at my door, she didn't want to keep him. She was 18. Terrified. She asked me to arrange an adoption. I couldn't. I didn't have the courage. I lied to you. I told you he was ours. That it was a mistake from before our marriage. You believed me. You raised him. You loved him as though he were flesh of your flesh. But the truth is, he wasn't even that. He was a stranger's child. And you made him your world regardless. I don't know how you'll feel reading this, but I hope you understand that whatever else I did wrong, I was right about choosing you. You were the only person strong enough to be his mother. Not because of blood, but because of who you are. I remained motionless. The words settled on my chest like a boulder. Not biologically mine, not even accidentally mine. Chosen by a man who abandoned both of us, who gave me a child and then walked away as though it were a favor. My breath caught for the first time in days. My knees weakened. I sat on the edge of the bed, paper still in hand. 1,000 images flashed through my mind. The first time I rocked Thomas to sleep, his tiny fists curled against my shoulder. His first word, truck. The fever that frightened me so badly, I drove to the emergency room barefoot in winter. The science fair project he cried over when the experiment failed. His first genuine heartbreak. His laughter when he learned he'd been accepted to college. Every moment, I believed, was ours. I had constructed my identity around this boy. I had shaped my existence around being his mother. And now I had to accept something no woman should ever face. He never truly saw me that way. He cherished what I provided. Not who I was. Not really. If he had, he never would have allowed her to place me in that kitchen. He never would have remained silent. He never would have permitted them to erase me. I placed the letter on the bed, smoothed it with my palm. It didn't feel like betrayal anymore. It felt like freedom. For 62 years, I had lived a version of myself that existed only to serve others. Wife, mother, provider, ghost. But now, with that truth staring up at me in faded ink, I recognized something new. I possessed strength I hadn't realized, because I loved someone completely who never belonged to me. And I never let that stop me, because I chose to remain when others fled. Because I created family even when it wasn't written in blood. And I could choose again. Starting now, the invitation list began with silence. No elaborate calligraphy, no gold foil, just a lined notepad and the sound of my pen scratching across it. I wrote the names one by one. Not people I was obligated to invite, but people I wanted present. Claire. My old colleague from the hospital who used to hide coffee in my locker when I worked consecutive shifts. Mr. Peterson, my next-door neighbor who always cleared my driveway before I could venture out with a shovel. Dana from the bookshop I visit each weekend, who always inquires about my life and truly listens. Nurse Janet, who once stayed late on her own birthday to help cover my shift. None shared my blood, but each had made me feel visible in ways my own son never managed. And that became the theme. People who saw me. It wasn't a wedding, wasn't a holiday, Just a dinner at my home with my food, at my table. No folding chairs, no back rooms. I spent several days preparing everything. Not because I needed to impress anyone, but because I wanted to. For the first time in years, I wasn't creating something for someone else's narrative. This wasn't about Thomas. It wasn't about redemption. It wasn't about proving anything. It was about making space for joy. For me, I visited the market and selected ingredients personally. Fresh basil, garlic, heirloom tomatoes. Not a single frozen appetizer in sight. I even purchased a new tablecloth, blue with sunflowers. It reminded me of something I would have chosen when I was 20, before all the responsibilities began accumulating like bricks around my life. On the morning of the dinner, I woke early and played music while cooking. Classic rock, folk singers, jazz vocalists. My house filled with aromas of garlic and olive oil and lemon zest warmth. Effort home. The first guest arrived just before 6. Claire with a bottle of red wine and a genuine smile. "You look wonderful, Pat." I did. Hair soft, silver at the temples, but loose and confident. A linen blouse that made my skin feel refreshed. No body shapers, no mascara tears waiting to happen. Just me. They arrived steadily after that. 6 guests. Laughter at the doorway. Embraces that lingered longer than necessary. Wine poured without seeking permission. We dined at the table I once used for folding laundry and helping Thomas with homework. Now it was laden with passing plates, clinking utensils, napkins dabbed to mouths mid-laugh. I laughed too. Genuinely laughed. Someone mentioned disastrous first dates. Someone else confessed to taking a pen from the bank weekly out of principal. And somewhere between dessert and seconds, realization struck me. This was family. Not assigned by blood, but chosen intentionally, authentically. I didn't feel forgotten. I didn't feel managed. I didn't feel diminished. I felt present. Toward the evening's conclusion, as we sat beneath string lights I'd hung across the back porch, Claire raised her glass. "To Patricia," she said, "for being the kind of woman who reminds us that it's never too late to claim your rightful place at the head of your own table." Everyone touched glasses. I smiled softly and meant every syllable when I lifted my glass and replied, "To finally being seen." The knock came just after noon. Not loud, not urgent, but persistent, as though he knew I was home and wouldn't leave until I opened the door. I stood in the hallway barefoot, watching his silhouette through the frosted glass. Thomas. It had been a week since the wedding. 7 days of silence from me. 7 days of unraveling for him. I opened the door slowly. He appeared the same, but not really. The formal attire was gone. So was the radiance. He wore a wrinkled t-shirt, dark circles under his eyes. His mouth tightened when he saw me, as though he'd rehearsed multiple approaches to this conversation and forgotten them all simultaneously. "Hi, Mom." I didn't reciprocate the greeting. I stepped aside, permitted him entry. He hesitated, then walked past me. The house was immaculate, tranquil. Sunlight streamed across the living room floor. On the mantel, the photographs were missing. Every last image of him. He noticed immediately. His gaze darted to the vacant spaces. "Where are the pictures?" I ignored the question. "Sit down," I said. Calm, detached. He complied, sinking into the armchair opposite me. For an extended moment, neither spoke. Finally, he sighed, ran fingers through his hair. "I didn't come here to argue." I nodded. "Good. He shook his head. "I don't understand what happened. 1 minute everything was perfect, and the next you're cancelling arrangements, posting financial records online." That stung. He didn't ask how I felt. He didn't apologize. He wanted an explanation. I stood, walked to the hallway closet, and retrieved a box, placed it gently on the coffee table between us. "What's this?" he asked. "Receipts," I said. "Every one from the past 12 months. Venue deposits, dress fittings, catering advances. I even covered the additional dance floor you requested. Remember that?" His eyes surveyed the papers but didn't touch them. Then I presented the next item, the letter, his father's handwriting. Unmistakable. I remained silent as he read. I observed his expression. Initial confusion, then recognition, then the gradual appearance of disbelief. He looked up. His voice cracked. "You knew?" "I do now," I replied. He swallowed hard. "So you're angry because I'm not angry because you're not my biological son," I said, interrupting him. "I'm angry because I raised you, Thomas. I gave you everything I possessed. And when the moment arrived for you to honor me, to stand and say, 'This woman created me,' you remained seated." He looked downward, silent. "You allowed them to relegate me to the kitchen," I continued. My voice remained steady. "You watched them humiliate me and said nothing. That's what shattered me. Not your DNA, not the money." He finally spoke, barely above a whisper. "I didn't think it would matter. Rebecca said it would improve the photographs, the aesthetic. I didn't think you'd be hurt." I laughed, cold and brief. "You didn't think, exactly." I stood, approached the mantel, held up one of the empty frames. "This used to contain a photo from your kindergarten graduation. You had a missing tooth and marker on your shirt. You ran from the stage directly into my arms. I set it face down. I'm done preserving versions of you that no longer exist." He flinched as though I'd struck him. "Mom." "No," I said firmly. "I'm not your backdrop anymore. I'm not your financial resource. I'm not your afterthought." He stared at the floor, jaw clenched. He nodded slowly. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "Too little. Too late." I collected the box, closed the lid, handed it to him. "These belong to you now. Take them. Every receipt, every record, every reminder of what you chose to overlook." He hesitated, then accepted the box, and I escorted him to the door. He paused at the threshold, glanced back at me as though searching for a crack, a softness, an indication that entrance might be granted again later. It wouldn't. "You always said I was your entire world," he said quietly. "You were," I replied. "And now I'm finally my own." Then I closed the door. The house resonated with laughter. Genuine laughter. The kind that fills your chest and crinkles your eyes without awareness. The kind that echoes through walls and reminds you you're alive. The aroma of garlic and rosemary danced through the air. The table was arranged with care. Blue and sunflower yellow fabric. Mismatched plates. Cloth napkins folded into delicate shapes. I had placed a candle at the center, not to impress anyone. Simply because I appreciated how the flame made the silverware gleam. My guests gathered in the living room, enjoying wine, sharing stories. Mr. Peterson was describing how he once locked himself out wearing only underwear. Everyone was howling with laughter. Claire had tears streaming from laughing so intensely. And me? I stood in the kitchen barefoot, holding a wine glass, smiling, not waiting to be summoned, not hidden behind a door, not forgotten. I was the hostess. I was present. I was seen. I plated the final dish, roasted vegetables with thyme and sea salt, and carried it out. As I set it on the table, someone applauded. "Chef Patricia strikes again," Claire said with a grin. We sat, passed the serving bowls, poured more wine. Somewhere between second helpings and the final bite of cornbread, Claire raised her glass again. "I think we should toast," she announced. Everyone nodded. "To what?" Dana asked. Claire turned to me. "To choosing yourself," she said. and to recognizing when to stop giving to people who only know how to take. Everyone raised their glasses, and I finally, fully raised mine as well. I stood. My hands didn't tremble. My voice didn't falter. I looked at every face around that table, people who weren't connected to me by obligation or blood, but by choice, by respect, by love. To the mothers who remained quiet too long, I said. To the women who gave everything and were told it still wasn't sufficient. To those who were asked to sit in the kitchen after building the entire house. This is for us. May we never accept less again, unless it's at the head of our own table. Glasses clinked, someone cheered, and I sat down. Not in the background, not out of sight, not in exile, but in my chair, my place. Thomas never called again. I didn't need him to. The people who mattered were already here. The following morning, I woke to birdsong and light streaming through my window. No regrets.